Good morning, you guys. We are here at the beautiful Malibu Creek State Park, and today we will be showing you guys how we train for some of those crazy Class 3 and Class 4 scrambles that you see us doing. And not only that, we thought it was also important to break down what exactly is the difference between a Class 3 versus a Class 4 scramble. So let's jump right into it. So first thing to know is that there's actually 5 different classes of outdoor hiking and climbing. Class 1 is going to be your very basic, easiest class. This is a trail that's already been established. You're basically just following the trail. A good example of this would be something like Mount Whitney. Now it might be hard, it might be long, there might be a lot of elevation gain, but the standard route up Mount Whitney, you're not jumping over boulders or bushwhacking your way to the top. There's a very clear route to follow. So that's Class 1. Class 2 adds just a little bit more difficulty. There might not be a totally established route. You might be hopping over some boulders or obstacles in the trail. But in general for Class 2, you don't really need to be like using your hands to pull yourself up or get over obstacles. Class 3 is really where things start to get interesting. So a good way to think about Class 3 is that you will be needing to use your hands. So this could be going up and over and around and down climbing big boulders. There's definitely lots of obstacles to get around with Class 3 climbing. However, with Class 3, really it should not require any advanced climbing skills or technical gear. So this is something that most physically capable people should be able to do, but that doesn't mean that it can't be dangerous or a little bit dicey. There's definitely some things with Class 3 where it might be a little bit scary. There might be a hard move, but it shouldn't be something that is overly technical for the average person. So some good examples of Class 3 climbs that we've done would include the Joshua Tree WC Scramble route, where we were essentially climbing our way up a gully. There was also the Chasm of Doom, where we're getting on our hands and knees. We're doing a little bit of crack climbing, but nothing with too crazy of exposure. So what's interesting about Class 3 versus Class 4 climbing is that the skill level required is not actually different. What the difference really is the amount of exposure you're getting while you're doing those moves. So Class 3, if you were to fall, maybe it's not that far of a fall. Class 4, if you were to fall, that could be really serious injury or even maybe lethal. Good examples of what a Class 4 climb might look like are some of the moves and areas that we had to navigate on Maroon Peak. Also some of the moves on Galena Peak to Little Sand G. And then finally, the most recent one was some of the moves that we had to do on Indian Head Peak. So if you guys remember, there was a spot where Adam was crack climbing up a pretty steep ledge. That in and of itself wouldn't necessarily be a move that you would call Class 5, but because of the exposure, if Adam had fallen, that was a 2,000 foot drop. That was a deathly drop. If it had been 10 feet off the ground, we probably would have said that was Class 3. It was a pretty easy little climb up, but it's just that difference in exposure that changes everything. So in terms of the skills that we're training for Class 3 and Class 4, we're basically doing the same thing, but the difference is that when we're training for Class 4, we are training for exposure.
Okay, so Class 5 climbing is the kind of climbing that not just anyone off the street can do. It requires a certain amount of technical skill, and often people will use equipment, ropes, clips, things like that.
So now we're going to talk about exactly how we train for these Class 3 and Class 4 climbs. So there's actually 2 aspects to our training. The first is just focusing on practicing technique. And we actually train our technique both in an indoor climbing setting and outdoor climbing settings. Now, when we're at a climbing gym, our primary focus is practicing getting up and doing the down climb. So we don't spend a ton of time picking out a really challenging V4, V5, working on that all day. What we're doing when we're in the climbing gym, we're picking a really nice looking V1, maybe a V2, and practicing going up and down that multiple times.
So pretty much everything you're going to encounter in a climbing gym would be considered Class 5. But it's really important to practice Class 5 because not only will it make your Class 3 and Class 4 scrambling a lot better and it'll make you more confident at those things, But also, we have found occasionally that we get a little bit off track on a class 3 climb and find ourselves having to do some class 5 moves. You'll probably remember that happened on Cloud Ripper. It also happened on Maroon Peak and a few other places. So not only do we like to practice in the gym, but once in a while, we love to get outdoors and do some class 5 free soloing in a controlled environment. I'm pretty comfortable free soloing lower class 5 climbs. This would be an example of something that is definitely class 5, but that I'm comfortable free soloing up. However, I'm not totally comfortable free soloing down. Down climbing is where almost everyone gets hurt when they get hurt climbing. So I'm gonna go up this a little bit, but not too far, just in case, because down climbing can be pretty dicey. The first thing to know about class 5 climbing is that you always want to have 3 points of contact. Just in case a rock comes loose or something, you're holding on with your other 3 points. The second thing is that it's all about balance. I have a good juggy hold here, so I can lean all the way back against that, you see? No problem. But then when I reach for the next hold, I want to make sure I'm going to be okay. So I'm balanced against the rock till I get my next nice juggy hold. Then I can pull up. So this is pretty easy for me climbing upwards. But now I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to try to come down. And that's going to be a lot harder because there's going to be parts where I cannot see the footholds. Now, when you can't see a foothold, you have various options. You can smear, which is what I'm doing here, with just a foot against the wall. But if you're going to do that, you want to have good handholds. Now, once you smear, you can come back, and now I can see there's a good foothold here. So I can lower my hands. And then I can smear again and lean back until I see the next good foothold, which is there. So you see that when you're down climbing, it really helps to get a juggy hold and lean back so you can see your footholds. When you're up climbing, you generally don't lean back very much at all. You want to be very close to the rock because that's the cleanest way to go up and it gives you better footholds. Down climbing, you don't have a foothold, you're looking for it. So you want to be able to lean back if you can get good juggy holds.
Now, outdoors, our primary focus is just on getting as much practice in different types of terrain as possible. So it's been really valuable to us to be able to learn the difference between climbing on granite that you might get in the Sierra versus climbing on really chossy, loose rock that we've had to climb on, for example, on the Little Gorgonio Traverse. Part of this outdoor climbing practice includes learning how to maintain those 3 points of contact. You guys have probably heard Adam tell me 3 points of contact, 3 points of contact when we're out on these sketchy climbs. And the reason for that is because when you're out in the wild, handholds cannot be trusted. When you're in a climbing gym, there's no way those holds are falling off. It's very unlikely. But when you're outdoors, you don't know what you can trust. A hold could rip out underneath you at any moment. But if you have 3 points of contact at all times, even if one of yours ripped off, at least you would have 2 other points that you could hold on to in that situation.
So this is where the class 3 gets a little scary. Elise probably would not die from this fall, but it's certainly not a fall that you want in your life. You could break a leg. So she's a little nervous. And what she needs to do is grab those pockets and get her hands solidly into the pockets.
Where are the pockets?
The pockets are on that stone. So you need to face the stone. You cannot butt slide this, Elise. Your biggest enemy in hard class 3 scrambling is butt sliding. What Elise always has a tendency to want to do. She wants to slide down this and she cannot do it that way. She will slide right down and hurt herself. So she needs to face the rock and grab those pockets right there and be a rock climber.
I don't feel good. I feel really scared by that.
Well, think about your feet down here. You've got good handholds here in the pockets and you just got to get your foot down to this. Another nice thing you can always do when you're practicing class 3 is go with someone who's a little more confident or experienced and they can help you through the dicey parts. Elise does not feel confident on this one, so I'm just going to hold her hand.
Well, show them the drop down there. I don't think
She wants to see the drop. She wants you to see the drop. It's a pretty long drop.
That's a long drop. You would die.
You're gonna put a foot here. You put your right hand in that juggy hole right there. Your left foot there as low as you can. And then your right foot just comes straight over. And I'm spotting you, nothing's gonna happen. 100% I will catch you. See how easy it is? Super easy when you got a spotter, right?
Yeah.
That was a really good example of how class 3 can be challenging. It wasn't technically hard. As soon as I was spotting Elise, she did it just absolutely easily.
Yeah.
If there had been a big mat, a climbing mat underneath of her,
I would have gone for it.
she would have gone in and done it easily and been like, that was not hard. But as soon as you see that scary drop, all of a sudden you tighten up, you want to butt slide it instead of just do it properly. And this is exactly why we train here, because it presents us with a lot of those kind of situations.
Now the second aspect of our training is focused on getting exposure. So preparing for class 3 and class 4 climbing for us is very similar, except the difference for class 4 is that we are trying to get gradually higher and higher levels of exposure. Now this doesn't always have to be only in terms of climbing exposure. Adam's snack spots are an excellent example of this. So some of you guys are like, what are you doing? Why are you dangling your feet 2,000 feet off of a cliff as you eat lunch? Every single snack spot like that is an excellent opportunity for exposure training. So if you can't even be eating your lunch over a 2,000 foot drop, how on earth do you expect to be climbing and scrambling when there's a 2,000 foot drop below you? It's just not realistic. So we try to do as much of that as possible and get higher and higher levels, further and further drop-offs, so that eventually, instead of panicking when we're standing above a drop like that, we're feeling pretty comfortable and confident out there.
Another way that we increase exposure is when we're on a climb, we look for lines that are more interesting and potentially more exposed. Probably the best example of this is the route we took up Mount Silliman, where we took that death drop ridge the whole way up. And we'd gone a few hundred yards to our right. There was a kind of a boring class 2 going up. We didn't want that. We wanted the excitement, the views, and also the exposure of the ridge. And that was really, really helpful in just training us for other places where you can't avoid the exposure, i.e. Maroon Peak, where that's just exposure. There's no way up without the exposure.
So that's pretty much it. Hopefully that gives you guys a pretty good idea of how we train for class 3 and class 4 climbing. Pretty much just get out there, practice as much as you can in as many varied terrains as you can, and have fun with it. Now we're out here in the perfect place to practice, so we're gonna go get after it. Let us know if you guys have any questions, and we'll see you guys next time.
Climbing higher, running faster, go